Gary Gulman. Those were 4 people on the show. Now, the person who was in charge of the network and the show at that time,
we probably shouldn't name.
who we won't name at the time, was in Calabasas. He decided he wasn't going to come to the show and help with the decision making. He wasn't going to be there to see what was going on. He was going to stay home.
The guy whose name a little bit sounds like Calabasas. Yes,
maybe.
All right.
Who knows? Allegedly.
Okay.
So what happens is, this is the most amazing thing that happened, and I'd never seen it before, because if you're in comedy a long time, white people in comedy clubs or comedy club comics do not get standing ovations normally, who are not household name. So if you're in a comedy club and a guy who's unknown gets a standing ovation, let me tell you something, get a helmet, because that guy's going to make it. Because in all my time at Play It Again Sam's, where I started, and I'll talk about that later, there was only 2 people that probably got a standing ovation at the time. And so we're going... one of them was Paul Wayne, who was a guitar comic.
Yeah, he was a local guy.
And one of them was Jack Gallagher, who was a comic who's now in, I think, San Jose or
So unless
Sacramento.
they bought the ticket specifically to see you, like, I got my Brian Regan ticket, I can't wait, this is amazing, and you're going to give him a standing ovation.
You're going to give him a standing ovation.
I had these tickets 2 months ago, but if you're an unknown, to get a standing ovation, it's unheard of.
Unheard of as a white comic. As a black comic, it's like breathing. It like happens all the time.
He's corny.
It's like
he's stupid.
That's the way it happens. It's like it's unbelievable.
He's
it's
stupid.
like
There's kingfish in there, man. I like him. He got a kingfish.
The black audiences are so supportive of their comedians if they love them, and if they don't love them, they'll just take them off the
Sandman.
stage.
I mean,
but anyway, so we're at the theater. Unprecedented, because these are comedy club comedians. Nobody's
in an 1,800 seat theater. These guys are not used to performing for more than 50
They've
people
never
at a time.
performed in front of these many people in their lives. These people are scared. The audience is not prompted at all to do anything. And Dan Natterman gets a standing ovation. Jay London gets a standing ovation. Monty Hoffman gets a standing ovation. And as I would say when I was an MC in a comedy room and I saw 3 guys up front, I'd say, oh, we have the Lee brothers here, homely, lonely, and ugly. And these guys were like... these guys
Are you saying Dan Natterman, Jay London, and Monty Hoffman were homely, lonely, and ugly?
They looked like me. They were like... It was like the... It was like the couch in Animal House, you know? It was like... And so... But these guys got standing ovations.
What the fuck are we supposed to do, you moron?
Meanwhile, Gary Gulman, who I represent, and I can be honest about this night, he had been killing throughout the competition. He goes on in Vegas, and in all honesty to Gary, he does not do well that night. He does not do well. It's probably like a 5 out of 10. So the judges go in there, and they go into the room, and
they give their 10 names.
They give their 10 names, but it's a casting show. It's not a comedy show.
Yeah, it's not a competition yet.
Yet. And so these people, and on the phone with this guy who's a network executive, he's saying, you can't put in those guys who look like that. America doesn't want to see people who are wearing overalls who look like... And
Monty Hoffman had just beaten cancer, and like half of his jaw was missing.
It was unbelievable.
But he killed.
It was unbelievable, the sets of their lives. And Jay London...
I said, I'm not allowed in the room.
He's not allowed in the room. So what happens is I did a Jay Leno thing. I'm at the side. I find a hole by they build this area where they are meeting. It's like plywood that they build. And
Can I say this real quick? Out of the people, you got network executives deciding who's moving forward. Meanwhile, you got a comedy manager and a comic that are like, no, these are the guys, and we're not allowed in the room. This is great. People have no idea the shenanigans, and they're like, that show was fixed. It's bullshit. No, it wasn't fixed. It wasn't bullshit. It launched a couple careers, and I put your name on it. Be a man.
So this is something I did. So I'm standing by the corner in the dark by a hole in the wall, and I'm listening, and I'm looking in, and I'm seeing that Gary Gulman's, what they do is they take a thumbtack and they put a person's thing. I'm seeing the Gary Gulman's thing. I hear them arguing over Jay London, Monty Hoffman, and Dan Natterman. And there's like one slot left, and they're thinking of putting this other person in who I can't remember their name, and I feel bad about it. I can't. Who was a fairly decent comic and a good-looking guy. And
was that super old guy that was like a biker?
Yeah, I think so. And I run over to Jay, who's at the other end of the stage, and I say, Jay, you're not going to believe this, but they're knocking out these people, and there's only one person left, one slot left, and we got to fight for somebody. And true to his worth, he banged on the door and he got somebody to come out, and you started yelling at somebody. And I don't know randomly why you did this or who. I
know exactly why, and I know what I said.
If you don't fucking put Jay London on this show, I am not coming back out there.
You got to find a new host, and I'm not going out to announce who got on the show.
And
Jay
I thought
London,
that was.
You got to keep in mind is a destitute man.
Jay London used to drive a cab to do spots. He used to park the cab in front of my club.
He would
go in and do second. Cab. I go in. I got a fare that I got to pick up.
People in his cab, and he pulled up the comedy
cab.
Club.
They wait 20 minutes.
Like, this guy doesn't have two nickels to rub together, and he looks like a caveman. And he was just one of these guys for 6 minutes. He's one of the guys that got a standing ovation.
Yeah.
And I was like, if this show is about one thing, it's about you got to give a shot to somebody that will never get the shot. And Jay London, to me, was that guy. Now, here's the thing. I'm going to interrupt you for a second. You go, okay, here are my 8 guys. Here are my 2 women. Now you have an entire network going, well, what are you talking about? And I go, what do you mean? They go, well, we need 3 women. And you go, well, 3 women weren't funny enough to be on the show, but those 2 women were really great. Tammy Pescatelli killed.
Yeah.
And I think it was Kathleen Madigan.
Yes.
Killed. And I go, well, these 2 women deserve to be on the show. And they go, look, I can't. This is what a network will tell you. Maybe not the network we were on, but other networks that may look and sound exactly like it. They'll say, look, we can't put a show on the air that's only 20% women. You got to get 30% women. And Barry and I are apoplectic going, and for you clones, that means you're really upset. Barry and I are going, there's not 3 women. This is not good. You can't just put a woman in and sacrifice ugly, lonely, or homely. But that's the way it goes. So we're forced to put a woman on the show that shouldn't be there, because per a network, you always have to have a black neighbor. You always have to have this. They always want everything mixed. Frasier was just fucking white. You know what I mean? The Cosby Show was just black.
There could not be a Last Comic Standing without a black comedian on the show, or a woman.
Would never have aired.
And true to Peter Engel, who I want to single out here, Peter Engel was like somebody who
created Saved by the Bell.
And a brilliant, brilliant producer. He's done over 1,000 episodes of television. And what Peter did for me personally, as well as you, Jay, is they always fought for me, because every year. And they wanted to fire me but I was the voice of the.
It's odd, and Peter would fight for us for no reason. Like, Peter would call me and go, "You know how I have back end?" He's like an old Jewish guy. I go, "You know how I have back end on the show, right, Bubby?" And I go, "Yeah." And he goes, "Well, guess what? Are you sitting down?" And I go, "Yeah." He goes, "I just told NBC you get half of my back end." That's unfucking heard of. A guy out of nowhere you get half my back end.
And Peter Engel had the grandfather clause in NBC because of Saved by the Bell. So Peter Engel had a definition of like 50% of the back end, unheard of, out of gross, not net. And I'll explain that later.
We're now sitting in my back end.
It's like an unheard of deal that never be repeated again, and no one will ever get it again. But he wanted Jay to be his partner. And they fought for me because I was like the voice of the comics, and the network never wanted me to be that voice.
Katz is a guy that is the voice of the comics. Like, that's something that, like, you were one of the few managers that you were actually up on stage hoofing it. And Buddy Hackett used to go, when I used to fight with producers, he'd go, "Just tell them they're right. You're not going to win. They don't know what the hell they're talking about because they never walked the last 30 feet. And I go, "What do you mean?" He goes, "From backstage to the mic. They got just enough balls to stand backstage and shake hands and laugh it up, but they would never make that walk. It scares the shit out of them. But you, sweetheart, you make that walk every night like it's nothing. Of course you're right." That fucked my head up.
Yeah.
So you got your ear to the door. I demand that Jay London is put on the show, or I'm not going to announce it because the crowd's going to riot. What we don't know at the time, you and I, because we're not allowed in the room, is that Brett Butler and Drew Carey have said, what I said about Jay London, they've said if Dan Natterman doesn't get on this show, we're walking.
That's right.
So the network now has a problem. You got 2 celebrity judges who, and in all fairness, let's not get
Anthony
sand
Clark
in
was
our
there,
vaginas.
too.
You had 9 out of your 10 people chosen for the show, and my one guy that I'm like, you got to put this guy on. So when they say Jay London instead of Dan Natterman, Drew Carey and Brett Butler stand up in the middle of the theater, an 1,800-seat beautiful theater at the Paris Hotel and Casino, and they just call Bravo Sierra, and they're calling it loud. They're screaming at me. They're screaming at the producers. They can't wait to get to the local news affiliate to say Last Comic Standing is fixed. It's fixed. These are the people that we brought in, like Drew Carey. Like everybody's friends with Drew Carey. Everybody's friends with Brett, but this made them irate. But what they don't know is the network says you have to have a third woman. And Katz and I are going, there's only 10 slots and 3 guys got standing over 2,000 the fucking ushers stood for these pricks. And you're telling me one of these guys goes home a loser, so you hit your female demographic for the show. And they're saying, yes, do it if you want to stay on the air. And one thing Peter Engel taught us, never argue if it means more episodes. Whatever you want, booby. If it's a third chick, you want 5 chicks? You know what? How about this? How about I go out and I just read every chick that was on and everybody else can go pound sand in their ass in the desert and we'll just have Last Comic Standing, the girly edition. I don't care. But people lost their minds and they said the show was fixed. And I try to explain to people, but I only speak to people 6 at a time because I never leave my house. Like, you can't fix an audition. And when you're trying to get in the house at that point in the show, it is not a contest. It is an audition like American Idol. You're auditioning to move on, to be on the competition. Now, once you move into, is it fair? No, it's not fair. What's fair? 90 feet from home plate to first base, that's fair. That's all. That's it in life. That's it.
I always felt that, I was sort of in a bad position because people who are in those situations, they want to be the ones to know that they made the right call or they did something. They don't,
the judge, Brett Butler,
the judges, and also executives and NBC executives. You want to be in a situation where you don't want a guy coming in who's a manager who can call something or say something that actually might happen the right way. For instance, I'll give you an example. There was one season we had our first meeting. We had our first meeting ever. There was a whole big meeting, and I was there, and thank God they hired me back again. And I had a DVD in my hand. It was my first meeting ever.
Was it the one of Tracy Morgan crying at your roast?
No.
I love this man. I give him my heart.
And right before, as the meeting's starting, I say, I just have something to say. And I slide this DVD, and it's spinning around the center of the table. I say, that's the person who's going to win this year. That's the one who's going to win. They say, oh, Barry, what is this, one of your fucking clients you're pushing again? I said, no, he's not a client. But that guy's going to win. And it was Josh Blue.
And Josh Blue won.
And Josh Blue won. And the last season with Felipe Esparza, the same thing. I say, this guy goes, he's going to get in.
These are not your clients.
Felipe is.
But he wasn't at the time because it's against the rules.
No, I'd started working with him about a month beforehand.
So the show's fixed.
No.
I'm kidding.
He had to audition for it like anybody else.
So the show goes on.
So the show goes on.
But I just wanted to put to bed, because people ask, and you hear the whispering and the this, and the stupid message board troll idiots, which, I've realized message board comment people are really the only people that really have their First Amendment rights. Like, if I drop an N-bomb on stage, somebody puts it on Facebook, I'm out of the business, but somebody on YouTube can go, who likes this guy? He's a blank. And it's Corvette Guy 11. 12. Oh, 11's cool. So, yeah, Corvette Guy 12. Camaro Guy 12. So that's the long and short of Last Comic Standing, and Katz did that, and we just got sidetracked because I was giving the projects that you produced. You're the producer of the Whitney Cummings show called Whitney. You produced the entire Dane Cook Tourgasm thing. It goes all the way back. You've always been a player. You've always been honest, and you've always really fought for comics, because you used to MC on garbage nights.
Yes, I did.
Up in Massachusetts,
I think.
And it was played against Sam's, and you had the craziest lineup of all time when you emceed. No one will ever put this together. Now, this wasn't like, here's a show, like when like Jim Norton, one of my favorites, David Tell, Bill Burr, Jim Brewer, these are like 4 of my favorite guys. They're on tour together. This was his, for years, this was the lineup per night.
This is what happened. Well, just to set it up, okay, I I was, I hope I can do this the right way. I started doing comedy.
You really killed the crescendo there. This is who he had. Now, if I could just back up a little bit.
I'm sorry, but it's important to get
I thought you were just going to go Tuesday night, Dennis Leary, Wednesday night.